Okay, so you are live. Vipin and Nima, take it away.
Hi
Yeah, hi,
everyone.
Ray.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Nima,
Thank
please.
you for accepting our invitation. This is something we wanted to do in the group for a while to kind of make a connection between one of the standard kind of entities in the area of kind of blockchain and telecom. So yeah, it's a great honor to have you here. So Vipin, if you have something to add, uh, otherwise Raymond can go ahead.
I'm very
Thank
pleased
you.
to be here and speak. Yes, I know some of the people on the list. Tuba Faisal is she used to work in ISG PDL, and I mean the company she works for is a member of ETSI. So yeah, there is quite a
Hi
few
guys.
links. Hi. In fact, some of the things I'm going to say are probably things that she was involved in writing. So yeah, I'll just give the aim of this is to focus on the aspects of permission distributed ledgers in telecoms networks. So we're not developing Hyperledger, we're not developing a ledger, we're developing the aspects of how to use the ledger. So I will talk now about what we're doing. Thank you, Nima. So blockchain applicability, we need to go beyond the conventional environments and build the distributed ledger case. We need to look at the manageability, scalability of the number of nodes and the transactions per second and the data capacity. The time and energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is a big issue for ledgers. In fact, the Bitcoin ledgers that have been, everyone thinks blockchain is Bitcoin when you talk to them first, but the Bitcoin ledgers have not been energy efficient at all. So we want to develop a ledger. We want to focus on the energy efficiency, and we would want to work with Hyperledger Foundation, well, Linux Foundation Hyperledger Group in their work. We want to develop fairness. We want to develop the legal implications and the governance aspects link into this. Now, the governance aspects are not things that ETSI is going to standardize, but to make it applicable across Europe and to make it applicable across North America and other parts of the world, we need to develop governance. Governance is one of the big issues here. So we're developing a permissioned approach, seeking for multi-sector environments, telco and beyond. We're focusing on the telco environment and beyond. ETSI came from the telco environment, so ETSI has a lot of experience of telco. I mean, I used to develop software for telephone exchanges in the early part of my career. I've worked in telecoms for about 30 odd years. So I'm quite an old man now. So I've been around quite a while. So my doctorate it was back in mathematics before AI was really in the mainstream. But some of the work I did in my doctorate could be used as the basis of AI now. So most of all, industrial implications are one-headed solutions, dependent on a single vendor. Most of the industrial implications people sell from a single vendor into an industry. And many of the other multi-cloud services management and governance are based on distribution, which becomes multi-headed and multi-vendor. So the vendors have to interwork and the operators need to make them interwork. And we need to develop a governance structure or a distributed authority organization structure to allow that multi-headed approach. So what's the focus of AI, of PDL? PDL is not focused on AI. Another group I'm working on is AI focused. We're focused in PDL on accountability, on performance and predictability. We want to predict the outcomes and we want to predict the history. We want service sector regulations, and we want to comply with regulations in various countries and governments in different parts of the world. So there needs to be regional regulation, needs to be national regulation. And I talk about regional in this sense as groups of countries. I don't talk about regional as parts of countries, but they could be either. The need for carrier grade service. Now, carrier grade comes from the idea of the telecos working on 5 nines end-to-end predictability, but we want to get towards 5 nines. Now, the internet used to have a terrible predictability, but it's getting better and better. So as we're going up the various generations in the internet, we're going to 4 nines, and hopefully we'll get to 5 nines in the not too distant future. Service level implies we want clear service level agreements that people have legal respect to keep. We want infrastructure that must be interoperable. We want governance using multiple flavors of governance, from governance from the software, governance from the legal aspects, so governance from above and governance from below and governance from side to side, and governance from the operators, the operations aspects, and governance from the vendor aspects. We want the autonomous governance and the distributed autonomous, the autonomous regions, the autonomous authentication must be based on solid agreed specifications. Identity and security are key factors in the governance. The governance needs to be completely identified. So what is the focus of this group? Well, the focus of this group was we defined a data processing requirements. We've defined permission distributed federated data management on trust, predictability, IPRs, and the IRPs, the interface reference points based on an architecture that was defined. We've got an effective conformability assessment based on the architecture, identity and access control, and last mile. Last mile means a predictable last mile. Let's go back. Predictable last mile of the telco grade Hyperledger type functionality. The operation environment for tracking industrial certified IoT and edge devices. Distributed and federated management want data collection, data sharing, PDL 002 based on data sharing requirements. Federated learning based on PDL 9, which I've shown here. And privacy and sovereignty in the data pipelines based on PDL 13. Non-repudiation in types and objects was PDL 14. Now, Tuba was involved in writing this document, so it's odd to speak to Tuba about this because, well, I was involved in discussing this with Tuba many times in the last year or so ago. Technologies and strategies is part of our work. So the next slide. Smart contracts. We want inherent immutability, auto execution and transparency, well-known operational methods and verification, well-established governance practices, well-defined data conduits and triggers. Reductibility based on PDL 18. Reductibility is based on ledgers. And the NIST was involved in some of the Hyperledger reductibility aspects. And the Hyperledger reductibility aspects have lots of ETSI members been involved in North America and beyond. So the PDL 4 and PDL 11 are the smart contracts aspects, but PDL 18 is based upon the redactability, interledger interoperability, and ledger agnosticism. So we want to be agnostic as to how ledgers interwork and interoperate. The joint work between ETSI, TCESI, and Sensenelec has been created on smart contracts, and we're aiming now to turn the smart contracts into real standards for Europe and for any other parts of the world that want to adopt the standards and use the standards. The standards will be voluntary, so what's EN would be a European norm, so it would be a European standard, but they would be voluntary standards. So if the European Commission makes them mandatory for EU countries, then other countries can choose to opt in or opt out of them. So using PDL work as a foundation. So they will no doubt base their work on PDL 004 and PDL 011-211, which these two documents are the two documents that were developed in ISG PDL. And Tuba is the expert because she was the rapporteur for these two documents. So smart contracts, the side chains enable editability. Side chain deployment allows you to forget certain bits of data, allows you to archive certain bits of data, allows you to cut bits of data off and make it more scalable. So that is the research work that we've done on scalability. So the way you can link this into a master chain, and the way you always have a history based in the master chain is there was a side chain there. The side chain could have been archived, it could have been cut off and edited and deleted. So the side chain might have been completely removed, or it might be simply removed temporarily. But the fact you can edit a new side chain in, or you can edit data back in to change the side chain. So you can cut a side chain off and you can put a new side chain in, allows you to edit certain data. So whilst the data in the master chain remains immutable, the side chains might not be completely immutable. So ETSI is working on application scenarios, which is in PDL 003. the operational aspects, the provision models, the special emphasis on the as a service paradigms, PDL as a service types, networks as a service, the service cloud as a service. So the PDL infrastructure is reliant on governance aspects. The governance has to be defined outside of the PDL, outside of ETSI. So ETSI is not developing the governance, it's not developing standards for the governance. Identity and trust management in the PDL 19 has been specified, been written down. These are reports, these are GRs. GRs are reports. The decentralized identifiers and the DID, this is being driven by Motorola, and Motorola, now owned by Lenovo, is working on the DID and trust management services. The control transparency to share trust data with service providers. Now, service providers could be companies like Telefonica, or they could be companies which purely work on service like Apple or Google. They could be working on end-to-end service. So they could be working on a data store, or they could be working as a network provider. So we need integration with APIs, and the APIs need to work from the service provision, the services in the cloud, services in outside the cloud, into public and private identity for services. And the public and private identity could be health services, or it could be various industrial services. The people looking at agricultural services and other kinds of horizontals. And there could be industrial services in actually abusing data identity to control factories and control food to field to fork has been discussed as well as a means of tracking food from its source in the field, which is presumably where the carrots grow or the beef grows in a cow, and to the fork where it gets cooked and where it gets through the supply chain and through the wholesale chain and through the retail chain, and how it gets delivered into your house and how long it's been stored in your fridge and refrigerators in the home, and when it gets cooked. So if it's been stored too long, you can trace the source of an illness. You can trace the source of good food, and you can presumably trace the source of bad food. EIDS is the European Identity Service, which the applicability is being discussed in PDL 17. Now, we're discussing the standardization of the applicability in the GR. We're not discussing the EIDS itself. The European Commission is discussing EIDS with Sensenelec. So we're working with Sensenelec on the EIDS aspects. The repudiation management is being discussed in PDL, reputation management, sorry, is being discussed in PDL 15. The ways to define reputation and its use cases, methods to define the score of reputation, and the detecting facilities to ensure. So the PDL has a lot of functions which are already standardized and published. The reference architecture is being discussed, and it's been discussed in PDL 12. The reference architecture as IRPs, interface reference points. It has functional blocks and is interledger interoperability and abstraction layers. This was worked on quite closely with the I suppose aspects of the cobot aspects from the industrial aspects of the reference architecture. It was also worked on by people in MEF. So people in the MEF forum in the US have worked on this. So the redactable ledger is also highlighted here. So the operational modes, interledger information exchange and mutual use. The offline interoperations in PDL 10 has never been gone beyond the GR. Redactable distributed ledgers is going from GR to GS now. The wireless consensus is the idea that you could have multiple vehicles or cars driving down a motorway, and they could be autonomous cars which are talking to each other and are communicating with each other. So the aim is to produce a known zone of secure information. So as the vehicles share information together, they don't know which vehicles are trusted and which can't be trusted, which are part of a ledger group and which are not part of a ledger group. And so the autonomous vehicles which are in the ledger group can rely on each other to share more information. And they can take data from outside the ledger group, and they can take that on a need-to-use basis. So the idea is to create a wireless consensus between the vehicles. So that is telco between vehicles, really. So we're looking at the telco aspects of how to keep the vehicles coordinated and working together, and how to keep data on the ledger. That's interesting. That's now being progressed into a GS, which has just started. The oracles, which is one form of having a distributed governance structure, or a DAO structure, application to the smart contracts, application to distributed governance. These are issues that need to be discussed. They're issues that haven't really been discussed yet. What is being discussed for telecom? Well, PDL 21 was discussed for telecom. It's in the approval process now. So PDL 21 was just published recently. So it was published a few weeks ago, in fact. So it has all these use cases. It has use cases, I think 7 different use cases on telecom infrastructure registry, on the operational log sharing, on the security and privacy in telecoms, on the resource sharing, on the trustworthy explainability of network native AI, on the AI aspects within the telecoms network, on the smart contract-based direct interoperation within it, and vertical support, where telecoms can be used inside other verticals of a network, what in ETSI we refer to as verticals. They don't really, if you're a field to fork, or if you're a farmer, or if you're a retail, you don't refer to yourself as a vertical, you refer to yourself as an industry. If you're a car maker, you refer to yourself as an industry. So yeah, they don't necessarily think of themselves as verticals, but telcos do. So PDL 21 is being developed into PDL 24, which is a specification which is looking at how this works in the 5G infrastructure. And 5G infrastructure will be developed into 6G infrastructure. The DLAF infrastructure, how telecoms control functions can be put into the kind of registration structure for 5G and onto 6G. So we propose new functional entities that are necessary for realizing a PDL application within the telecoms network, specifying architectural design enabling telecoms within the network management and control capabilities in PDL. Now, this was discussed today. It was discussed earlier. Define service procedures among the proposed new functional entities. So this is ongoing work item. It's a progressing work item, the GSPDL 024. It's not a completed published work item, but ETSI members can get access to it. And it's in the open area. So in the open area, V009 is open to the world. So everyone can see it. So I can describe how to get at the open area in a few seconds, if you wish. So what has ETSI PDL done? ETSI PDL has done all the documents in black. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. There's no 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 2 versions of 12 which have been produced on the reference architecture. There are 2 versions of 11 that have been produced on the smart contracts requirements. The PDL 13, PDL 14, and 15. There are 2 versions of 18 on redactable distributed ledgers that have been created. PDL 19 has been produced, and that is the GR that is being worked on the DID framework now. So the 19 is being produced into the 23, and the 20, which is the wireless consensus network, which was the GR, is being produced in 25, which is the first draft has just been produced. So a number of them do have, so 4 and 11 work together, 3 and 12 work together, because the application scenarios and the reference architecture fit together. And so that is where we are. So where we are at the moment is we're looking at the PDL 17. There is no 16 either. 16 was closed. So EIDAS applicability. And the PDL supply chain management 22. 22 is based on the reputation, which is in 15. So 15 is a GR on reputation that is being built on or been in the in 22. And the supply chain management has worked. So supply chain management bases very heavily on the reputation management. And on the settlement of usage is based also on 22. So 22 is about to be approved. So 22 is one which was in the approval process. 21 has just been published. Okay, so I can give an overview of what's in each of these documents, but yeah, it would take a while to go through each document, perhaps, and we'd need to get the rapporteur here on the meeting. Hello, Tuba. What is a POC? POC is a framework. It's with the POC, the proof of concepts framework in PDL 5 is built on here. Build awareness and confidence of the system. It's a way of having demonstrations, of creating demonstration material, about having informative information, about having normative deliverables. Whether you publish information as a demonstration or as an informative and normative set of deliverables, or as a white paper, it will be made more public. It's a way of ETSI inviting people to make a demonstration. The aim is to develop a benchmark that proves that what's in a specification is either good or maybe bad. It's not wrong from the specifications perspective to prove something that doesn't work. To explore technology options, we can explore technologies, including Hyperledger technologies. We can facilitate gap analysis. We can contribute to a guide and guide future ISG activity. So different new work items may be created from POCs. It's a lightweight process. It's fairly easy to create a single POC. It's fairly hard to, well, I mean, some ISGs have created 20 POCs. So this ISG PDL has only 3 POCs at the moment, but it could create more. We can run a POC project. POCs can be run on a benchmark with 2 or 3 people, but you could have an entire project working on a POC. So there is no upper limit to the size of a POC, but there is a lower limit, of course. The lower limit is really that it needs to have one ISG member who should be an ETSI member, ideally, who needs to be able to bring the work into ETSI meetings or ISG meetings. That's really the reason why there needs to be a member. So the purpose of a POC is to define, is to test, the purpose of the POC from the POC's team perspective. They have their own IPR. They can create their own patents. ETSI doesn't need to know anything about the internals of the POC, what the proof of concept, what is proved. So they have their own purpose of the companies working together to prove something. To make the purpose can be as simple as a demonstration. Their purpose can be to prove a product. Probably needs to be one nominal operator, but the operator can be a university. It can be someone with a benchmark test. So ETSI is a fairly liberal interpretation of what it needs to be an operator. A POC needs one operator, which can be a benchmark university. It needs one ISG member, and it needs 3 members, of which 1 or 2 members are normally vendors, but they don't have to be vendors. They could all be institutes. So that's basically what a POC is. POCs that we have done so far. The blockchain for intra-domain security was a POC which looked at 3 aspects: avoiding prefix hijacks. It avoided hijacks of messages, IP messages from prefix attacks. It proved the IP and ISN ownership of various nodes along the way. And it used pretty good protocols to update messages validated against the ledger. So it proved things. Now, the Polytechnic of Barcelona and Catalonia and Barcelona was the main leader of this. And they became a member of ISG PDL to lead this work. So this was backed by Huawei and I think several other companies. I can't remember exactly who was involved in this, but yeah. So it was largely based on that. POC 002 was a secure marketplace ubiquitous goods. They were looking at using a mobile phone app to securely use ledger aspects to open a lock, and the lock could be based on in a gym, it could be based on in an office, it could be based anywhere. So that's why it's claimed to be ubiquitous, because the lock could be anywhere. The lock could be owned by an individual, the lock could be owned by a company. So the aim was to use smart contracts to verify. The aim was to have an auditable marketplace, to be able to audit who's able to unlock the cupboard, and so you'd have a track as to how many keys you had, how many keys were copied, and you could use the ledger to work out who had copies of the key. You had multiple distributed ledgers, you had multiple copies of the key, and they could be distributed around multiple phones. And this was based upon the SOFI project. It was a European Union paid for project. So SOFI was quite a big project, but it was driven by Ericsson. It was the project leader was Ericsson in Sweden. So the POC number 3 was the timeless metaverse environment. They were looking at using the blockchain to secure the metaverse. So people on the metaverse or objects on the metaverse could be secured using blockchain, and metaverse could be linked. This metaverse here could be linked to this metaverse here using blockchain, so that they'd be able to recognize each other's applicability. So this end user was able to talk through, so intermediary to this end user. So that's really what they were proving. Now, from the specifications point of view, it's just as good to prove that something doesn't work and the specification needs amending to say it doesn't work as to prove that something does work. It's not necessarily good or bad to prove that. So a proof of concept that says something definitely doesn't work is just as useful to ETSI as a proof of concept that says something does work. It may be less useful to a vendor, because a vendor may only want proof of concepts that work, because they want products that work. So what does ETSI have? ETSI has open and well-established mechanisms to validate participant nodes. ETSI reaches consensus among the participant nodes. ETSI has a concept of reaching participant nodes. ETSI can publish and execute operations related to the recorded transactions. ETSI can facilitate the automation of node management and operation. ETSI communicates events relative to the node operation, defines a ledger data flow for different scenarios, so it defines how the scenarios are used within a ledger. It verifies the execution of smart contracts. The aim is just to verify that smart contracts work. Now, I've been in various meetings since Tuba was involved, that we're talking about how smart contracts can be used both in the legal profession, in the industrial context, in the field to fork context. And I was in a meeting only a week or so ago with a group of lawyers in the US, which were talking about how smart contracts could be used in the US to replace or to strengthen the way in which attorneys in the US could develop or could improve their teaching and could improve the validation of their work in the legal environment. We discussed how smart contracts could be used in the legal profession in the UK for transacting property. So that's been discussed in the London law courts, not by myself, but some of the information has been picked up and used. Yeah. And since Tuba was involved in King's College, which just across the road from the law courts, it wasn't very far for it to travel, but it's not the distance aspect. Establishing trust links between different ledgers, but the ledgers are beginning to see use that if valid information is put into the ledgers and stored in the ledgers, then there is value in having it immutable and having it historically traceable. But of course, the information needs to be able to be archived, so it can, and the information needs to be able to be tracked in terms of transactions per second. So what is the DAO for a digital autonomous organization? This is an idea which has been presented to ETSI, but it's not been agreed yet. So and before I say much more, I need to say that DAO has not officially been agreed. ETSI is unlikely to standardize how a DAO works, which members can become part of a DAO, but a DAO, or a digital autonomous organization, it's only valid if many organizations join the DAO. So ETSI will develop guidelines for an application of transparent and autonomous in the governance of ICT. ETSI is working on the governance of ICT. So ETSI is looking at the interoperability and application for transparent and autonomous. ETSI is looking at standardized specifications. It's looking at testing and certification, and it has a testing excellence center. So ETSI won't develop the digital autonomous organization. It won't develop what is an autonomous organization. It won't legalize what can be in the governance. It won't decide what is who is allowed to be in the governance and what organizations can't be in the governance. It will just develop a framework of what is allowed. ETSI would develop the impact of ledger characteristics and the consensus protocol. It's looking at consensus protocols and APIs. ETSI is looking at necessary alignment of ancillary elements. ETSI is looking at blockchain-based self-coordinated and self-governed aspects of decentralized governance, mediated by a self-executing rules and deployed on a public blockchain. So it's have a public blockchain that is self-governing, you need to have some method of governance which sits above it. So to be public, in any public infrastructure, you need some sense of policing and governance. So in every country, we have a sense of a parliament, and we have a sense of a police, but I wouldn't say some are bad or some are good, because they vary in some ability. So ETSI is looking at tokenization. ETSI is striking a balance on the size. ETSI is looking at the operator supply chain management. ETSI is looking at the service life cycle and the decentralized marketplace and the service level agreements. ETSI is looking not so much standardizing what is in a service level agreement or how the agreement's made between two parties or two or more parties. ETSI is looking at the enforcement and how you can use a service level agreement and keeping participants honest and penalizing by reputation. So these are ideas for blockchain which have been published in this 6G RAN concept, and the future wireless network is native to metaverse. The aim is to make a blockchain native to metaverse, and how you can have various IMSIs and various vehicles driving along a road, joining and leaving this metaverse. And you need to develop various protocols and where you can have various kinds of hyperledgers or various ledgers which join the blockchain, and you need various trust between the ledgers. And different vehicles and different companies may make vehicles which have different ledgers on board. So ETSI is looking at that aspect. So ETSI is looking at the aspect of blockchain controllers and blockchain-enabled radio access network. Maybe something that ETSI looks at in the next year or so. So I can't say at the moment how these functions are going to be given. Decentralized network architecture is looking at decentralization of the architecture. Blockchain technology for managing and verifying interactions. Resource sharing needs to happen through smart contracts. Network autonomy and adaptability needs to happen. Network autonomy is going to happen as vehicles drive along roads. So you can see that as vehicles drive along roads, or as people use applications on mobile phones, that networks come and go. They appear and disappear within minutes or seconds, and sometimes they stay around for hours because data privacy. You don't want to share data with everyone. I think people would allow their private data to be shared with some people, like members of their family or members of the company they work for, or members of the health service they choose to join. But they don't want their data to be shared with everyone. Ultra scalability. So we want data to be valid, and the data is, we can show that we need a decent decentralized radio interface. Now this is just showing how different peoples can work through. Alice and Bob can talk via registry. So this is just a use case that's showing how that can happen. So in conclusion, ETSI aims to address the gaps in the complex landscape of DLT and blockchain. The challenge to challenge as it is, we want to challenge the network as it is, avoid the temptation of reinventing wheels or levers. We don't want to reinvent things, we want to reuse things. ETSI works on essential concepts of permission distributed ledgers, operational aspects. On commercial operation, added value, we want to add value to the existing systems. We want to match the physical assets within the digital world. We want smart contracts. We want to use the smart contracts. We want to develop that into standards and make it used around the world where it's useful. We don't want to simply enforce it. ETSI is no means of enforcing it where it's not useful. We want to make PDL available as a service. We want to make PDL as a network. We want to make PDL as a service enabler. PDL could be a service in itself. It could be a network between ledgers, and it could be a network service enabler. It could be the application there. So ETSI has these links which you can go to. So I would encourage people to look at the links for the proof of concepts. We want more proof of concepts, and they're very easy to create proof of concepts. The ETSI work program is ETSI member list and work program is here, and the ETSI research. What's I'm not showing here is the ETSI open area. I can show it if I. So if I go to the ETSI portal, please feel free to interrupt me anytime you want to. The aim isn't for me to talk for an hour. The aim is, which I probably can do, the aim is for everyone to interact with me and try to find holes in what I say. So this is the ETSI portal. This part of the ETSI portal is public to everyone. So if I log out, the public can see this part of the ETSI portal. So if I look at PDL, everyone can see this level of the ETSI portal. So if I go to the top level, I can describe how to get into the ETSI portal. To get a lower level agreement, you may want to create an account. You may want to create an account to actually create an account on the ETSI portal. ETSI has various agreements with Sensenelec, with ATIS, with Arab, and their standards organizations. ETSI has lots of agreements with Linux. It has an agreement with Linux Foundation. I can find Linux Foundation on this list if you want me to. If I go to the partnership agreements, Linux Foundation will no doubt come up. If I type in Linux Foundation into an external body, external bodies and ETSI body, no, external bodies. If I type Linux Foundation, it has an MAU with Linux Foundation. Yeah, so this allows everyone in Linux Foundation to relate to various groups in ETSI. And yeah, it was created by Sylvia. Sylvia's worked on MEC, so on ISG MEC, so ISG PDL can be easily linked into this. So there's no reason that Hyperledger can't work with ETSI through this MOU, through this memorandum of understanding. So if I go to PDL, you can see all this information publicly, and the information about the open area. If I click on open area, you can see drafts of all of the work items. And if you click on some of the higher numbers, we'll get some documents which are not yet public, which are not yet published. All of the lower numbers have been published. Like if I take PDL4, the higher versions of PDL4 will link to a published document. So this is the way you can get the Word version of the published document. Okay, so PDL4009 was published. PDL4111 is the PDF version which you can find. So that's the way you can get at the Word version. But if I go back to the versions which are, so I go back to the 27 doesn't exist yet, so 27 is just a so this document was uploaded by Shahara a few days ago. So this is an early draft. This is 001. This is the first draft. The first draft was accepted today. So this was uploaded today, and it was produced in October. So okay, fine. So it was approved today, and it was published. It was produced at the end of October. So I can't say newer than that. Probably that one's as new as possible. Okay. So that's only a first draft. That's not published. How do you get at published documents? If I get easily back to the, yeah, I can get back to the. How do you get at published documents? If I'm not logged in, which regards me as if I go to any contribution on the work program, I can click on a document. If I go to other work, click on publish documents. I'm only unclicking this because I don't normally go to this area. So if I pick a document, say PDL, PDL 12, PDL 12 is the reference architecture. So I get this document and I get this comes up. Now it says I can't, if I'm not logged in, I think I wasn't logged in. It says that, yeah, it says that the Word file is only for ETSI members and ISG participants, but the PDF file is for everyone. So everyone can get the PDF file. This is how you can download a PDF file legally and properly. The open area has only given you kind of draft copies. So this is how you can get the document. So that's the home page. The home page contains lots of links to terms of reference, white papers. And we can produce more white papers. There's no immediate problem with that. Publishing a white paper is an ETSI white paper. PDL member list, PDL open area, the work item form is how you create a new work item. The GR skeletons are skeleton documents. Yeah, and the activity reports and PDL presentation. So the meetings, yeah, we get lots of meetings. Okay. We have a meeting roughly every 2 weeks. Meeting PDL 102 was earlier today. The contributions, again, if I don't log in, this proves I'm not logged in because the contributions become live if I've logged in. You can only see the titles of the contributions if you don't log in. If I do log in, things change. So yeah, I can show you. Nima, you were there today, so you can see this.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, so I don't. Do you mind if I
No, I
step
don't
in?
mind at all. No, of course.
Yeah.
Yes,
So yeah, like I've been trying to get involved more in the PDL, and I've been kind of joining the last few meetings, and I had my kind of small first contribution there to Shahar's document on the supply chains, right? So I kind of saw the process of contributing, and I also kind of understand the sensitivities in ETSI, kind of trying to have a implementation neutral kind of a theme in the documents, which is quite understandable. Now, like the most interesting thing for me, well, the first thing is that most of the topics that are kind of being discussed in all of these kind of working or activities in the PDL are really just aligned with most of the work we've been doing here. So we have a similar kind of approach in a way, as in this Telecom SIG, we're just an entity here. People come in from different companies, vendors, operators. They come in, they bring in their use case. And then we try to see kind of how we can help them to kind of put that into kind of a white paper or sometimes a proof of concept. And then that usually kind of serves as a reference architecture oftentimes, but with the main focus on Hyperledger, obviously, because they would be mainly using Hyperledger as their kind of infrastructure for their distributed ledger or blockchain. Now, in terms of the kind of work that can be done here is that I can really see that those proof of concepts could be really done through Hyperledger, because we also have another kind of infrastructure enabled by Linux Foundation, which is the kind of internships that the Linux Foundation offers. So the idea there is that we have annual kind of internship calls where a group of people come together. Again, members of the Telecom SIG have been involved in these before. So they come together, they put in a proposal, and then based on that, they hire PhD students or any other kind of researchers, and then they work on a proof of concept or a similar project, right? And I mean, I understand again there are different limitations. So there's the fact that you need a full member. So I'm representing Connect, which is a full member. So there would not be really a big problem there. In terms of kind of Hyperledger, kind of taking away that kind of vendor neutrality of ETSI. Again, it's open source project, so it's probably the best. Even if it's gonna look like that it's just being tied into one platform, at least it's a open source platform, right? And it has probably the biggest kind of open source community among the other kind of alternatives. So my to wrap up, essentially, my question here is, and this is really more something between you and David, that kind of have a good understanding of these two entities. That how do you see, if we want to, let's say, create a connection between these two entities and see if we can bring in those proof of concepts from PDL here, and then we try to actually work on them in this group using Hyperledger.
A proof of concept from ETSI's perspective is quite easy to create. There's no real reason why a proof of concept isn't demonstrating one benchmark, which could in fact be Hyperledger. I don't see that we have to be neutral to all multiple ledgers, but of course, ideally, if multiple ledgers can be brought in, that may be better. But having a proof of concept that demonstrates that a ledger works could be a good demonstration. So I think what you need, if I take the decentralized internet infrastructure proof of concept, then if I click on this, then there is a proposal and there is a final report. Now, these are the members. The four members were the University Polytechnic of Catalonia, the Telefonica, well, we know who Telefonica is, Huawei, we know who Huawei is, and the University of Carlos III in Madrid. So there were, so it's quite easy there needs to be at least one operator, but the operator could be anyone that runs a benchmark, to be honest. I think I've worked in other parts of ETSI where we've had proof of concepts which have only been involved, they've not involved any major network operator like BT or Telefonica or Deutsche Telekom or it don't have to be a European operator either. So They just have to be a member of ETSI, like AT&T is a member of ETSI. So if AT&T wanted to, there needs to be a proposal. Now, if I click on the proposal document, I don't know what's going to appear right now, but yeah. So clearly the proposal document has a template. It has a skull. The template, the ETSI number is assigned by ETSI. It needs a title. The title is here. It needs a leader. The leader has to be an ETSI member or an ISG participant. It needs a short description, and it needs some acronyms and goals. I mean, the project goals were really here to define, and for some reason, yeah, not all of the things were. It has 3 goals to fix these things. It has some milestones. I suppose I'm slightly embarrassed that the not all of the. I suppose I can. No, I can hide the.
That's all right.
Don't worry about
We,
that.
we,
Okay.
we used to these
It
kind of
doesn't matter. You can see the revisions. Hover
Yeah.
over it. You can probably see the person who made the last revisions. But okay, but no, it's been changed to PDF, so it's not. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, so really, these are the people involved. Okay.
Well, I do like the idea of increased collaboration and doing something together. And Nima, you have a good, we don't have to necessarily wait until the mentorship program, although it's coming up, I mean, I know you're aware, but just for the other people on the call, we do a call for mentorship topics at the beginning of every year. So that's coming up, if we want to draft something and submit it, we certainly can. And then the process is those proposals go to the Hyperledger Technical Oversight Committee. They review and approve those, and then the approved ones can then hire for the mentees. So that's certainly coming up, and we can absolutely do that. But there are we can collaborate, with or without that mentorship program as well. But yeah, that is timely, certainly.
No, the good thing with mentorship programs is that then you can actually have someone hands-on who's gonna dedicate some time to it, and we have
Dedicated,
we have the labs, the Hyperledger labs as well, which is essentially again whatever this POC is going to produce is going to be an open source piece of code, which again kind of increases its kind of reach as well, right? Rather than just essentially being a document which is going to be just used by let's say the ETSI members or just the community, right?
How the open source piece of code is made available, I don't immediately have the answer to, but I can ask. ETSI has some open source projects, so there's no immediate reason why the ETSI can't have see some publication of the open source code, but open source, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean that's great.
ETSI has lots of experience in publishing documents, but ETSI is moving into the idea of well, in fact, it has a CTI, it has a Center for Testing and Excellence, and they have a concept of open source projects. If I go back onto this web page, some of the projects are called let's see if we can find them. So there are some open source projects in here.
That's cool. Well, that's another place we could collaborate. I mean, obviously, Hyperledger hosts open source projects as well. So yeah, we could see where there's overlap.
An open source project as well for Hyperledger, for Ledger as well. Yeah, there's no reason why PDL couldn't be modified to have 2 strands, to have one side of PDL on specification, one side of PDL on open source. Yeah,
Raymond, yeah, we can always talk offline as well
projects.
too.
OSL and OSM these are open source projects. All these ones, grey ones. I don't know why they chose grey. Yeah. TFS, OSM, and OSL, OCF are all open source projects.
Yeah, I mean that's great. So what it means that it's we won't need to convince anyone that he's already moving towards open source. So that's good news
It
for
has a
us.
concept of moving towards open source. Yeah, OSM is open source, which is it's good that OSM and NFV are side by side, because OSM is a partner to the NFV ISG. So ISG NFV is developing the NFV architecture and the NFV cloud components, and
And I
OSM is
think a
testing
good
it in
part
open
of
source.
that is the Linux Foundation LF networking people
Yeah,
as well,
they're
right?
working with the Linux Foundation people. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Okay. Yeah, great. Were you kind of wrapping up the speech then, Raymond?
yeah, I'm wrapping up the speech. I'm quite happy. I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah, I'm happy to
Yeah, yeah, great.
explore ways that ETSI and Linux can work together. Hey, and, yeah.
Yeah, if
Telecom
anyone
SIG.
else has any ideas, any comments?
So Raymond, why you are means why it says focusing on permission distributed ledger only, not public distributed ledgers? Specific reason?
Well, ETSI decided to focus on permission distributed ledgers because they were seen to be in the realm of telco operators, who would give the permission, who would manage the permissions. And they may be seen as a way of making the ledgers more small and interoperable. They could be linked to IoT sensors, which are very low cost. It was to do with management, governance, and scalability, whereas public ledgers weren't seen to be so easy to scale, or so easy to know the management of, and who would manage them. That might not be a very perfect answer, but that's pretty well the answer that Telefonica discussed with me at the time.
Mhm. Any other questions from anyone?
Well, the European Commission have recently asked PDL to be prepared to discuss public ledgers. Okay, that's the other side of this coin. Yeah.
Mhm.
If I look at the terms of reference have been modified to include the public ledgers. Yeah. No, that's not that's the open source terms of reference. Okay, that's not the terms of reference. That's
I
not
have a
PDL terms of
question.
reference.
Yeah, I have a question on the telcos adoption. So, which areas do you think telcos will be more open to experiment these, and which areas do you think they may not be very interested? Do you have any comments?
Well, I'm not a telco, but I think telcos are very interested in the work that we did in DII with on securing the IP path across the telco network. And so the danger, well, if you're sitting at home watching a video from a server, then whether it's an over-the-top service or a telco provided service, or a mixture of both. In lots of countries, they are mixtures of both. So the idea that you could secure the path using a blockchain is, and you could secure each node in the path using blockchain. You could secure the headers of the protocols, which are, give both the control path and the data path or the video path. That information is clearly in the telco environment, and in the over-the-top environment. The companies like Google and Apple are interested in that as well. So whether it's cloud or whether it's telco, what telcos are, as you get 5G and 6G, it becomes interesting to discuss what is telco and what is not telco, because as you have 5G and 6G applications working towards industry, then what you think of different industrial applications could be supported by telcos. So exactly what applications are not of interest to telcos becomes harder to actually understand. So as you get into some of these applications, it's easy to work out exactly how you would secure a telco path like this, which you basically want to have two people on the other end of the path, whether they're sharing video or sharing a telephone call, or maybe a video call, and they don't want someone to hijack the call. And if you have a metaverse situation like this, where clearly you don't want people to hijack the metaverse, and you want to be able to link different metaverses together. So some of the examples here are quite easily understood to be within the ETSI domain, but exactly what is outside the ETSI domain, I mean, some issues about trading and legal aspects may be seen as outside the ETSI domain at the moment, but the telcos could in fact have a part to play in providing resource, whether they're cloud resources. So as you move towards legal entities having like property contracts, and they need somewhere to store the legal contracts. So telcos could get involved in the cloud storage, but that might not be seen to be the telco's front office service today. But telco's front office service might be seen as end-to-end telephony. It might be seen as end-to-end video calls. But the idea of cloud provision might be a telco service as well. I know that China Telecom are looking strongly at providing data centers or internet data centers for different companies around China. Clearly, all the legal operations in China could be stored on services, and there is quite a big competition between China Telecom and China Mobile because they want the resources, but they probably want to collaborate on some of the standards because they want to use some similar standards, but they want to kill each other in the marketplace. They want to go ahead and corner the marketplace. The field of fork operations will become an issue. The circular network, I mean, how you track products from their manufacture or from you can mine certain base elements from certain mines around the world. You can put the elements together in industrial factories to make mobile phones, make cars, make whatever you're making, all sorts of things you can make in factories, and you can make components for property and things. You can make televisions, you can make all sorts of, but all of those things include various base elements. You can track what's in them and how those base elements are recycled. And those products will inevitably come to the end of their life at some stage, and they need recycling, and the base elements need taken out of the screens or televisions or telephones, and they need recycling into the next generation of screens or telephones or whatever. So how telcos are less likely to get involved in the recycling, but they may get involved in tracking and in the cloud and the blockchain aspects of the tracking. So it becomes less clear as to what is telco and what is not telco. But I mean, the accounting settlement between companies is less likely to be telcos directly, but the basic information communication between companies could be done by telcos in the cloud. So blockchain could have a direct impact on the telcos getting involved in nearly every industry. Is that controversial or not? I mean, the legal profession would never imagine using the telco industry for more than just providing telephones, but they could end up requesting the telco industry to provide data and data stores and cloud stores and backups of the data and blockchain information to actually maintain their smart contracts. So the legal profession could end up being a customer of the telco, much more than they are today. That doesn't directly answer your question, but the telco could get more involved in every area of this. But there are areas where they won't get involved. They're not going to get involved in farming, but they may get involved in providing a set of software resources to track what components are put in tractors. You need big cloud servers to store this information. And whatever information is stored on a blockchain is inevitably going to be put in a big cloud server somewhere.
Yeah, I think, Raymond, these are good PDLs to look in. For example, PDL 027, PDL 026. That's what we are also working in Telecom Sec.
And they are just starting as well, yeah.
Yeah.
27 and 26, yeah.
So because we have published various solution brief on PDL to 026 with Linux Foundation Networking and Linux Foundation Edge. And I think this is good to start with. I think Nima is expert in settlements and SLA kind of things. So Nima, which part you are contributing in this ETSI things? Which PDL exactly?
Yeah. So there's obviously a timeline with each one of these as well. So I know there might be kind of a open activities related to each one of these, but I mean, at least since I've joined the meetings and ETSI, there's only a few of them that are currently open.
Yeah, that's right. The blue ones are open ones, and the black ones are generally published and closed. But they may be reopened and edited.
Yeah. So the one that I got involved was a 02022 essentially, the supply chain management, because we did a bit of work. If you remember, Vipin, we did some work on using auctions for kind of resource reallocation between a bunch of kind of network operators to reuse their data, and that did fit well with the way that these supply chains were defined in this PDL. So kind of we use that as in network slicing use case. We use that as a use case for this PDL. Obviously, kind of concepts similar to that could be kind of proposed as a proof of concept. But yeah, we have to think about it more. I mean, obviously, we haven't. We've actually had kind of more people from vendors interested in Telecom Sec. We've had limited people from operators really on Telecom Sec. Vipin or David, do you remember any members from operators in Telecom Sec?
I think Telefonica was involved in the community, in the Hyperledger community, a while back, and we've had some interest in Vodafone. But you're right. I think it would be great to get more, but there's been some limited.
Even David, Deutsche Telekom also joined sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. Yep. They were. So I think I think a lot of operators are like exploring blockchain certainly, and we've seen them in the community for sure. But I think we could do more to bring them, make more connections here.
Even as a standard bodies, I think ETSI also we met in 2021. I think in MWC and then GSMA as well. So, but that's again, I think everyone is exploring. That's the point.
Yeah, we did have people from GSMA on the call for a good while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So in the interest of time, well, I'm in China, so it's 2 a.m. here. But yeah. So in any case, so let's wrap up if there's not no more kind of stuff to discuss.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think we're set. Well, thanks for staying up late, Nima, and Raymond, thanks for your time. It'd be great to talk more about how to collaborate, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to encourage collaboration somehow, and I'd like to explore ways in which we can get together and make things happen. And proof of concepts is a good way forward because they don't have to be agnostic and across different kinds of ledgers. And annexes can be added to GSs, which are less agnostic. So Hyperledger, you can simply say, were this to be specified in Hyperledger, you can have this as an annex. And use cases can, we can reopen the application scenarios for use cases. So don't mean to change. Yeah, we
I
can.
think we can start with the specific PDLs
Yeah.
we started. So we will figure out which PDL is good and where we can start with. Like for example, PDL 19, 22, 26.
19 can definitely. 19's only just been done, so it can be revised easily. Yeah. I think the ones which are harder to revise are 1, 2. Yeah, 1, 2, and 4. Well, 4 and 11, Tuba was involved in writing. 1, 2, 4, 11, and 14. Tuba's not here at the moment, but she was involved in these quite heavily. Yeah. And her name's on the ETSI directory as the author of the. If you look at this, yeah, the names are still there. The names of people who wrote them.
Yeah. Hey then. So thanks. Hopefully this will be a beginning for something good. I think we can add value to this because I did have a look at lots of these PDLs.
And all the drafts are available.
Yeah. And the way they discuss like concepts such as scalability and so on, but obviously it cannot really go too deep into the implementation details. But that's something we can do, right? So we can bring in these as POCs, and then we can kind of hopefully get some mentees to actually do some implementation and then actually do some scalability analysis maybe on some of those works and put some kind of numbers into those kind of scalability ideas that are discussed in the documents, right?
Yes, and the POCs don't have to not all the information. If you define a 4th or 5th POC, as you can see, the very limited information is various presentations and the stuff is available on ETSI, but the actual implementation could be a Linux document. There's no reason why you can't have some documents of yours and some documents of ours and work together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The same team would have their own IPR, and so the things which are more IPR sensitive or restricted, you could own the IPR in Telecom SIG, and yeah, you don't have to make them available to ETSI.
No, we are open source group, so we don't really do IPR, do we, David?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer myself either, but yeah, we do.
It can be open as well, but yeah, I'm quite happy for it to open IPRs. ETSI has all of the information that's published in ETSI is under FRAND, so it's fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. So it doesn't if you want to reserve IPR, members can.
Yeah, in the community, everything is licensed under an open source license. People can obviously take that code and do things with it. But yeah, we can get into the details in another conversation.
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't get into the details of actually discussing what kind of licenses work here. Okay, but yeah, I think it's pretty similar. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we can have if we want to explore that, can certainly have a conversation
We
about
wouldn't
it.
have an MOU if we didn't have a similar IPR arrangement.
Hi, Raymond. Hi, everyone. I had a quick question. I was just reviewing the that proof of concept number one, the DII. And I was just wondering, do you foresee anything, any projects as that go granular down to for example, like the RF, the wireless signal on the physical layer?
Do I propose it, or do I foresee it? There's no reason why it shouldn't, but I don't propose it to happen. Right? It's not my proposal that's going to make it happen. But yes, I'm not against it. I don't think. I think there may be. We're not going to create specifications in PDL that overwrite 3GPP, but we may write proof of concepts that go into specifications that go into 3GPP. So 3GPP people and companies. So the work that happens in RAN can be influenced through PDL. If that makes sense. I mean, if you look at, if I go back to the top page, 3GPP is one of these groups. 3GPP. So all of the specifications developed in 3GPP are seen to be part of ETSI from a European perspective, but they're also seen to be part of ATIS or TIA as well. So 3GPP is an ETSI partnership project. So it's a project which encompasses many SDOs. So the answer is yes, they could incorporate RAN. They could go down to as a piece of software that works in the RAN, but no, they don't have to, and I'm not going to propose it right now. I'm not against it. Does that answer that? Yeah.
Yes, definitely, and yes, I see your point.
I want to stay neutral to that, because I might end up being one of the reviewers. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Good presentation too. Thank you very much.
But yes, I think they could. Any proof of concept could take things down to the RAN.
Yep. And thanks, Raymond, for accepting our invitation, and let's see for future collaborations as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
You're all welcome to join ETSI as well. You're welcome to join ETSI either as a member or as an ISG participant.
Thanks.
Just contact me and send me information if you're not a member of ETSI already. Okay.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.